You ready? All right. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And with that said, Ms. Sawyer, roll call, please.
Sharon Wharton,
Present.
Pam Pereza,
Here.
Rodney Walton,
Here.
Daniel Spence,
Here.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Here.
George Archuleta,
Here.
Virginia Houston. Thank you.
And because of Ms. Houston's absence tonight, I'm going to ask Ms. Sawyer to read the ethics awareness statement for us, please.
Welcome to the November 15th, 2021 committee meetings of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of the board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is your duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage your personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board today? Let the record reflect that no conflicts exist. Thank you.
Okay. And as chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for November 15th as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Need a roll call vote?
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Virginia Houston is not present this evening. Thank you. Motion carried.
At this time, it's my pleasure to call on Mr. Jim O'Rourke. He is our NCSBA representative, and he is here to get us started on our most important duty, and that is the superintendent search for Elizabeth City, Pasquotank County Schools. Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, Dr. Ingram. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to get started with your superintendent search for a new permanent superintendent. I believe the last time we met, I ran through the process that the School Boards Association uses to get good information, get good candidates, so you can make the best decision possible for your schools and your community. And tonight is the first step in that process. I believe you have in your materials a series of documents that will need board approval for tonight in order to get started. Should have a couple of things there. The first is just a memo explaining what each of the documents is. They should have a timeline, draft vacancy announcement, list of some advertising options, sample application document, and two sample survey documents. I do have some additional copies if anyone's having difficulty identifying those. We're just going to walk through those documents one at a time in order to get things started. So the first document I would draw your attention to is the draft timeline. I believe this is very similar to what we discussed at our last meeting together, with the exception of maybe bumping up this initial meeting to get started. And I think that's a great step to get this advertised before the Thanksgiving holiday as folks go back to spend some time with their families and maybe start thinking about their next steps and what might be in store for them toward the end of this school year. So I think it's a good idea to go ahead and get started sooner rather than later. As you'll take a look at this document, you'll see several dates listed there. The one date that I really want to draw your attention to is the application deadline. That is the only date that will be set in stone. All of the other dates are flexible, just sort of target dates to keep the process moving so that you have someone in place by July 1 of next year. The January 31st, 2022 application deadline that we recommend here gives you several weeks to advertise the position. Again, we'll advertise nationally and across the state, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. It also gives you a good window to get some community and staff feedback. And again, we'll talk about what that looks like in just a minute as well. And we tried to accommodate your committee meeting schedule, your regular board meeting schedule, winter holiday, the spring break, things like that, and even leave you a little bit of wiggle room, particularly toward the end as well. So unless there are any specific questions about the timeline itself, I would ask for the board's approval of a January 31st, 2022 application.
Are there any questions, any concerns? Okay, so I will ask you to give a motion from the floor to approve the timeline as it is presented, specifically the application deadline of January 31st, 2022. So may I have a motion from the floor for that?
I move that we accept the draft timeline as presented.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and we need a roll call vote, Ms. Sawyer.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Virginia Houston is not present this evening. Motion carries.
Very good, thank you very much. The next document I would draw your attention to is what we refer to as the vacancy announcement. It's got your school system logo at the top. And we'll just sort of walk through this very quickly. I would encourage you just to remember this is an opportunity to notify potential candidates that you're hiring. So sort of a we're hiring document, as well as some information about how to apply. And just intended to be a brief snapshot about the school system, the community. There's not intended to capture everything about the school system here and everything about the community here, but again, just a brief snapshot so folks can decide whether or not they're interested in applying. At the very top there, I think we've built in your mission statement, and we will include the January 31st date deadline. So that first box, just this is what we're doing here, and this is when applications are due. The next paragraph is a brief introduction to the school system. We would just ask, if you're able to briefly here, just confirm that some of those numbers look right, about 5,800 students, 13 schools, over 800 employees. Does that sound generally current, up to date? Any potential changes?
We do need to change the enrollment. Ms. Haynes, do you have an updated number? Closer to 4,800 instead of over 5.
Okay. So serve approximately 4,800.
Yes.
And then still the 13 schools, over 800 employees. Sound about right. Any other changes to the board to that paragraph? Right. And I just to keep things moving, I'll keep going, but please do stop me if there are changes. The next paragraph there is some information about the community, where you're located within the state, number of residents, as well as some additional information from, I believe primarily from the Chamber of Commerce website, drawing attention to Elizabeth City, the waterfront, Seaport, the institutions of higher education in the area, the Coast Guard base, as well as some accolades that previously appeared in Money Magazine. And is there anything else that members of the board would like to add or modify? The next paragraph spills onto the back page. This is just information about who applies. First and foremost, we address some of the legal requirements, which are generally that they have licensed or otherwise have serve under state board policy. They'll be required to, by law, live within the county, but I think a little bit Elizabeth City still in the county, so I clarify that it's just within the attendance. One thing, it's kind of at the very bottom there. It's the central office building level experience or preferred. A doctorate degree or progress toward a doctorate degree is preferred but not required. The only thing that we set the board sometimes add here is if you're interested in non-traditional candidates. Add a line saying that non-traditional candidates are encouraged to apply. That's if you're interested in someone maybe with a higher education background or a business background. And then going on to the back are just sort of some of the primary general introductory characteristics that we like to list. The board will have an opportunity to really get into more detail about your profile, exactly what you're looking for. But this list is just intended to cast as wide a net as possible, at least for this applicant, to get a good outcome. Are there any questions or any changes to either of those two paragraphs at the bottom of the first page or to the list on the second? All right, hearing none. And then lastly, we've got the apply online. We have an online application as we talked about. We would encourage all inquiries to come through the North Carolina School Boards Association. Certainly, if you hear from candidates, please direct them to us. And if there's anyone specifically that you as individual board members want us to reach out to, please reach out to me and we'll have that contact come from us rather than from individual board members. And then very lastly, we've just included some links to the area information as well as the local media. Is there anything else you'd like us to add to that list of area information or to local? We'll make those changes. We'll include the date, update the enrollment number, and we'll go ahead and start getting this posted tomorrow. The next document I would refer you to is one that lists the advertising options. The first page here are a number of free advertising options, and we would certainly encourage you to take advantage of all of those. The only paid advertising that we recommend is at the very top of that first page, and that's with AASA. It's a great way to reach candidates nationwide. Given the longer application window, I would encourage you to go with 6 days if the board is interested in doing that. We would try to stagger that, maybe not start it right initially, but push it back just a little bit so that it ends a week or two before the application deadline. So you get some good exposure right up until that January 31st deadline. If you take a look at the back, we have some additional advertising options that the board have requested over the years. You do get a good amount of saturation, especially given the length of time that a vacancy will be advertised and you'll be accepting applications through AASA. But if you're interested in any of these additional options, you have them listed there. Some boards will use top school jobs, and then others, depending on the specific target for their applicant pool, might include the personnel administrators, Chronicle of Higher Education, National Alliance of Black School Educators, or the Association of Administrators. So because this will be an additional expense, we would just ask for board approval of any of the paid advertising that you would like. Is
there any discussion about any of that from anyone? Yes. Yeah. I do remember our advertising with American Association of School Administrators, and I cannot remember if we advertised with National School Boards Association or not, did we? Do you know, Jim, last time?
The National Connections Hub, that second one on
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
We did do that?
The free
Okay.
ones.
Advertising.
Okay,
Yeah, I would encourage you to do all the free ones.
Right.
okay.
No trouble at all. It's just any additional paid option.
So obviously, I'm new to this, so I would have, the question is to experienced board members. I think you partially answered, you asked the question, Sheila, did we use any of these in the past? And if we did, how effective was it?
Right.
And then the
Yeah,
second
we
portion
did.
is to Dr. Ingram, if he could have some recommendations on these as well. So first question is, do we use any of these and how effective were they if we use some?
I think we used all the
We
free
used
ones.
all the ones that he's recommending.
Not the
Right.
paid, the
Yeah.
paid ones.
And we got some excellent candidates. Both times,
So we didn't
So-
use any of the ones that cost?
Yes,
yes.
We used the
yes,
ones
that was the
really
question I asked,
couldn't hear
and yes, we did. And then my follow-up
Which one
question,
was it?
We used the American Association of School
the
Administrators,
first one,
the top
all
one.
right. And then I was asking if we used the 30, did we pay for the 30 days or the 60 days? I couldn't remember.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Generally, given the longer window, I would encourage you to have it out there.
For the 60 days.
Yeah, I would recommend the 60 days given the window at this point. Because if you put it up too early, folks forget about it, comes
Yeah.
down a month before the deadline.
Mhm.
To be quite honest, half of your applications are gonna come in the weekend before the deadline.
Right,
Even at this level, that happens.
that's what
You
happened.
really want up there as long as possible.
Yeah.
All right, so the second question to that is, how effective was that? Did we get great candidates from that?
Yeah,
Yeah, these are-
Both times.
we did. I mean, if you
From
look
that
at,
paid-
yeah, if you look at probably all of our top candidates went on to
Mhm.
take positions as superintendents in other districts. So, you know, we did, I think we had a good pool of people.
Mhm.
From the American Association, not the national one also? I'm just wondering if we're spending
Well,
extra money.
From our advertisements, we had a good pool. Now,
Right,
whether or not they came from what site
right.
they initially saw the,
They didn't
They
disclose, they
listed,
didn't
you
disclose
don't-
that information.
Right,
we
so
don't do that.
My thing is, if we're spending money in a certain area, like a survey, we should know
Yeah,
whether,
so that's why we recommend AAS.
Because that's where a lot of the
That's where a lot of
candidates,
them come from, and it
come
gets
from.
picked up by a lot of other organizations. The
Yeah.
other ones are just optional. The only paid one that we recommend to every board for every search is AASA, because you do get good applicants.
Yeah.
Mr. Spence, because you asked me specifically, I would echo that. I see the AASA journal everywhere I've been,
yeah.
and it's across the nation, and it links automatically to other places. So you could certainly do Ed Week, but if you do AASA, you're going to get the same people. Because they would take both of those publications. And I would say that the AASA is probably more widely read by potential candidates. So and it's going to reach a diverse applicant pool as well.
that's good, okay.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Yeah, since that's an addition for that expenditure. yes.
I make a motion that we accept the standard advertising options and include the American Association of School Administrators for a 60-day time span.
We need a
Second.
second. Do we have a second? Okay. Tammy?
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes,
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes,
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Miss Virginia Houston is not present this evening. Motion carries.
Fine, thank you very much. The next document is a sample application. This is just a PDF version of what we make available online. You can see just some of the initial pages are the usual information that you would see on a job application: contact information, employment history, education, background, things like that. Pages that I would ask you to take a closer look at are pages 9 and 10. On page 9, we have our short answer section. Here we ask applicants to briefly describe any significant accomplishments, innovation, and other experiences they have in a number of areas. And non-traditional candidates are encouraged to describe comparable accomplishments and experience. These essays and short answer questions are intended to provide you with a screening tool. So as you're looking through applications, you're not limited to resumes and cover letters. You get a little bit more specific information in the areas that you're most interested in. But you also want that to be manageable. Folks will have to sit down and fill this out, but you'll also have to read them. But we would encourage you, or we generally recommend, as far as short answer goes, picking up somewhere between 4 and 6 of the short answer prompts. And then on page 10, we generally recommend 2 or 3 of the essay questions. I defer to you how best to do this. If there's just a general consensus on, again, generally about 4 to 6 areas that you definitely want to hear from applicants about when they submit their applications. I wouldn't, you don't need to, you end up getting to 4, that's fine, you can stop there. If you have 7, just wanted to squeeze that, I mean, that's fine too, but generally the target range is about 4 to 6. So there's some that the board is most interested in hearing from applicants about. And you can ask about any of these things during the interviews, but this is just their initial responses as they submit their applications.
Do you want us to come to a consensus about those now?
Yeah, well,
Or,
that's it. So in order to get the application
Okay.
out live tomorrow,
okay,
which one you'd like? Somewhere in the range of 4 to 6. I mean, there's 7 of you. If you just want to pick one, probably going to be some overlap along the way, that way. Entirely up to you.
Karen, do you first kind of want to round robin so we can see those we have in
Yeah.
common?
yeah.
We're selecting these. It's on page 9.
Okay, looking at page 9, those samples questions, beginning with Daniel, do you have any particular one that you feel pretty strongly about?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I like
So can he give?
3,
Uh-huh.
personnel relations and administration,
You said 3? Uh-huh.
3.
Uh-huh.
Obviously 1
Mhm.
as well,
Okay.
instructional leadership.
Okay,
That's the 2 that stand out, so,
okay. Rodney?
on that page.
1, 2, 4, 6, and 8.
1, 2, 4, 6, and 8.
Okay. Pam?
1, 2, 4, and 8.
I would like to see, which has already been mentioned, 3, 4, and 6. Was I would like.
Okay,
1, 2, 4, 6, 8.
okay. And Sheila?
1, 4, 5, and 8.
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8, and then I have 1 vote for 5. That'll be 6 or 7. So do you, just a matter of whether or not to include number 5.
I marked it, I just did not mention it, I don't know why I skipped it when I went up.
Another vote for 5.
Yeah.
I think that's fine unless someone feels strongly to stick with 6. I heard 1, 2, 3, 4. basically 1 through 6 and then number. Sound right?
I think we're all consistent with 1 and 4 and 8. So that's 3, the top 3, 1, 4, and 8. And I guess, and 6. So that would be 4. 1, 4, 8, and 6.
3 got plenty of votes, didn't it? Number 3? Only 2? Okay.
I think it was only you and I said 3, Mr. Archuleta. But I like it.
I haven't gotten your voices down, so I'm doing the best I can with the last time. Check who's voting.
I'm Sheila, so I wrote them down, and I know we all chose 1.
Mhm.
And
8.
I think all but 1 chose 8. And I thought most of us
It was
chose
4 for
4.
4.
Yeah, we all chose 4. Right, and I think 6 was close, maybe 6 had
3,
3,
3.
so.
3 from 6.
So 1, 4.
So we know 1, 4, and 8.
And you could add number 8 on me. This is George.
So 8's a lot. 8. So 1, 4, and 8 is definite, you're saying? How many questions did you recommend?
4,
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
I would say.
So 5 would be good. So
Number 4.
so the next one was 4, I guess was the next after 1, 1, 4, 8. And which one you say had the next majority?
6 and 2.
6 and 3?
2.
6 and
2
2?
had 2 had 3 votes, 6 had 3 votes.
Okay. Whatever, I guess.
Close. All right, let's see. This is just kind of an initial screening tool, gives folks a short answer. I wouldn't get too bogged down. Again, 6, 7 would be fine, 4 is fine.
So just add 6
Want to make
next to
sure
be
you're
4?
getting what you want to make that.
I think-
impact.
So adding number 6 will be 4, correct?
1,
Correct.
4, 6, and 8?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
1, 4, 6, and 8.
Yeah, I think we should,
Madam Chair,
Mm-hmm.
I would like for us to look strongly at number 3 if possible. I mean, if the rest of the board don't like that, that's, I understand.
I like 3 also, Mr. Archuleta, but the majority didn't choose that, but that's why I backed away from it.
We agree that it's important, but I think for the short answer, we'll be able to get into the details of that as we go along. So it doesn't need to be, I feel, in the short answer part of the survey.
Some of these kind of overlap because I could see myself answering, getting into my opinions or feelings about personnel relations and administration as I am talking about my instructional leadership. So you kind of, you're going to get some of that perspective from other answers. If we have to narrow it down to 4, I think you're still gonna get a feeling for that. And if we go into the interview process feeling like that's extremely important, then we're going to make sure that we address that issue at that time. So
it's safe to say 1, 4, 6, and 8?
is that what we're going to stick with, 1, 4,
I
6,
think
and
so.
8?
Yeah, because we can follow up just as what
Yeah,
you
we can
shared.
follow up.
Wow.
And
This is, what we need to be reminded of is these are questions that they have time to think about and prepare and make sure they're well-written and they're saying exactly what needs to be
Yeah.
said. I think we're going to get more out of those interviews
right.
and the questions they're not prepared to answer or, they have not seen and spent time
Yeah.
with.
Yeah,
So
we
I'm
definitely
fine
have
with
lots
that.
of sample interview questions that include the personnel, the HR stuff. That's something we asked about in the references when we get to that stage. So if there's anything that you don't address in this application, plenty of opportunities to come back to us. So you've got 4 there, so flip over to page 10. Again, not to slow things down too much here, but we would ask the board to sort of by consensus identify 2 or 3 of these. Because you stayed on the lower end on page 9, you can go to the full 3 here. For a couple of different things that you want to ask about at this stage. Again, these are initial screening questions. Why specifically they're interested in coming to Elizabeth City Pasquotank, things like that. Yeah, just sort of by consensus, are there 2 or 3 that the board would like to include in terms of essay questions? And these tend to be a bit longer. Some candidates will include data, things like that. In a set.
Are you recommending 3 for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did 4 on the previous section. I think you're comfortably do 3 without
Okay.
feeling overwhelmed. A popular question is the student achievement levels and achievement gaps. We do have a lot of instructional type questions on the previous section. So that might be one thing to consider just to avoid too much.
I think that's, especially in the light of the pandemic, that's an important question, number 3.
He was saying it overlaps with some of the short answers.
Page you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I
10?
do think you have a lot of the instructional
Right.
leadership, goal setting, monitoring, and achievement success of the first population.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that we could do for number 3 is add that modifier, just say maybe in light of
Specific
pandemic
the
or
questions.
tie it specifically to the last 8 months. That's just to come more at how you approached pandemic, instruction, maybe coming out of, just to go beyond, just if you want to use it.
Do we need to share these as well?
Do we
Karen?
need to share these as well?
Yeah, these go on the application, that's
Okay.
live tomorrow.
Okay.
And we
So does
selected,
anyone have any strong feelings about any particular one of these?
I selected 3, 4, and 6.
I didn't hear you. 3, 4, and 6 is what Dr. Williams said.
I'll second what Dr. Williams said.
Anybody else?
I did 2, 3, and 4.
The 2, 3, and
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4.
Well, I have 2 and 3. And I could go along with 6.
I have 1, 4, and 6.
Pam?
1, 2, and 5.
I had 5 also.
Is that the only one?
Not sure if you have any others.
Is that the only one you had, Ms. Warden? 5 is the only one you had?
Well, no, I had some of the others that you've already said, so.
Yeah, so I
But
had
5
3
was
votes for
one that I
3,
had that
5,
was different.
3 or 4 votes for 4 votes for 6. Number 3, number 4, number 6.
They were all really good, and I'm comfortable with whatever the majority decides.
You did say that even if someone's question doesn't make the cut list for the application, it can come out in the interview
Yes, sir.
in conversation.
Yeah.
So,
These are all things just sort of, you're not limited to a resume. A little bit more to go on as we decide who to bring in.
And your recommendation for this is how many again?
2 or 3.
Okay. So 3, 4, 6 sounds
3,
fair.
4,
So-
and 6.
3, 4, and 6 is what we want to go with? Okay, that's fine.
Right. And last but not least, we'll take that vacancy announcement, we'll take the application, and that will all be live tomorrow. The last step here are some online surveys. Generally, we recommend while you're waiting for applications to trickle in for the next 8, 10 weeks or so. taking advantage of that time to get some feedback from your community. We have 2 sample surveys provided you. You'll see at the very top, and I apologize if this is a bit confusing in the copies that you have there, but there should be sample survey number 1, which is a shorter version of the survey. It lists a number of characteristics, and respondents rank each characteristic on a scale regarding how important they are. And then the last question of that survey is an open comment box where community and staff members can put in whatever they want about the superintendent search, about what the board should be looking for, questions that they'd like the board to ask, etc. Sample version 2 is a bit longer and much more detailed, so you tend to get fewer responses, but it's again a bit more nuanced. We would encourage you picking one version of the survey and providing it both to community and staff. If you have separate community and staff versions, that will push out so that you can compare the results you get from your community to the results you get from your staff. A lot of times there's a lot of alignment. Sometimes there is some difference where that plays out. But at the end of the day, the idea is to have a good list of community members and your staff members as well about what it is they need as you go through this process. The version of the survey number 1 is a little bit shorter. You tend to get more responses. Version 2 is more detailed. You get fewer responses. And both have that in common. Members of the community and staff can also come to your public comment sessions at your board meetings to share information about what they think you should be looking for in the superintendent search. We'll also invite community organizations to submit organizational statements, so the Chamber of Commerce, PTA Council, things like that, so they can all have an opportunity to share their thoughts. This will also go live tomorrow, or maybe the day after. We'll work with your folks to get that online and reach out to your staff. Some consensus from the board about which version you'd like to use, just version 1 or version.
Madam Chair, I think we should think strongly on number 1, the shorter version, because if we're talking about going out to staff, I know they're busy as it is, and having to look at a survey and study it, you know, I think it's quicker. I realize it ain't as in-depth, but we could talk about that during the interview, or, you know, we have some question. But I think even parents are busy. Some of them have 2 jobs, and the longer the survey, I mean, I'm talking personally, I guess, you know, after a while, it's just like, wow, this sounds good. You know, the shorter I think is the better, but that's my opinion.
I agree with Mr. Archuleta, but it's been my experience, as much as I love survey number 2, the nuances and the way that's actually put together, and I would prefer it to be that way. Unfortunately, the results usually come out in survey number 1, that you get more responses to that type of a survey.
I agree with that. But I do want to encourage our community who is listening and our staff members. And I'm going to say this to the board members as well. You know, we want to encourage people to come and express their thoughts about, you know, what they're looking for or what they want us to really consider as we go through this process. We want to encourage community involvement by allowing you to come during board meetings, during public comment. You know, if you have further comments to make beyond the survey questions, please do so. Because we want to make sure we hear from a wide variety of people, and we want to hear from everybody, all opinions, all voices.
Well, Sharon, if I could echo that really quick, I'll just add a quick story. During the last superintendent search, those of you who were here on the board at that time, remember that I was a constant at the 5 meetings that we had for the community. And look where I landed up. I landed up on the board. That's why I said, I don't know if this will be a good story or bad, but I thought I was gonna be the next superintendent, but I wound up on the board. So I'll take the role that I'm able to serve. So I would recommend, again, that the community and other stakeholders definitely, support and come and participate, as this is a superintendent for all of us, not just for the people that are here.
Exactly. And we're representing you, and we want to make sure we hear your voice to guide us as we make this decision. So just wanted to put that in there. Does everybody agree the shorter version of the survey will work? Okay.
Well, that is it from me tonight. I've got a bit more to do, and so I appreciate you taking the time to work through all of that at the outset here. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them while I'm still here. Anyone should feel free to reach out to me. We're going to get things up and running pretty quickly tomorrow, so in the next day or two, you'll get an update from me, including copies of the community survey, in case you want to push that out. Your own personal social media, things like that. We'll get a copy of the vacancy announcements. You can get that up on your website as well as other advertising talked about. And then it'll be fairly quiet for a little while we wait for surveys and applications. Back in your board meeting, January, February to present the results. If there's anything else that comes up in the meantime, please figure it out.
Sure will.
Enjoy this little bit of respite before things really start to pick up in early 2020.
We appreciate your coming tonight, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to tonight's business with the Financial Committee. First of all, Ms. Wilkins, the maintenance report, that was just for information only, but does anyone have any questions? I believe she's joining us online. So if you have any questions for Ms. Wilkins about that report, you may ask at this time. Does anyone have anything that they want to address? Okay. So we're going to move on to Ms. Haynes.
My name is Sue. I'm the leader of first item is NB. First amendment. English amendment. Very brief. First amendment. $1,509. This includes interest received in PRC 15 and the allotment for PRC. Second amendment is number 303. It's an increase of $3,600,000 for PRC 103. Last amendment for $1,000,000. Are there any questions?
And you're asking for these to be placed on the consent agenda, right? Okay, for the board meeting. So I need a motion to place these on the consent agenda for the board meetings.
I'd like to make the motion that we place the budget amendments for FBT 02 and FBT 03 numbers 102, 303, and 802 on the consent agenda for the next regular meeting.
Okay. A second for that?
Second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
The fundraisers, yeah. Are there any questions about those? Okay. So we are going to ask for a motion to place those on the consent agenda. I jumped the gun there. I should have waited. We could have done it all at the same time, but a motion to place the fundraisers FBT 03 on the consent agenda for the regular board meeting.
Second.
Okay?
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams, George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Okay. Is that it? All right. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. As always, Ms. Haynes does a great job. Okay. Ms. Perezza, are we ready for you? Sure.
Okay, now we have Dr. Barnett Berry, who will present to us regarding the Community Schools Initiative.
Hey, by way of introduction, board members, if it pleases the board. Barnett Berry, Dr. Berry is a University of South Carolina research professor and senior director for policy and innovation. I met him when I was in South Carolina a few years ago and was intrigued by the whole child community schools concept. However, Dr. Berry is no stranger to North Carolina. He's got strong ties to the state. In fact, he lived here for over about 19 years or so in the Carrboro, Hillsborough area near Chapel Hill, where he worked on the Excellent Schools Act. Also worked with former Governor Jim Hunt, who chaired the National Commission on Teaching in the Future of America. And he recently returned to his home state of South Carolina. He's also done, he was going to add this, I guess I'm stealing his thunder. He's co-written things with Linda Darling Hammond, retired from Stanford University, is now the state board chair in California. In education circles, Linda Darling Hammond is a prominent national name, so he knows her very well and has done a myriad of other things as well. He spent the day with us. We toured the community. He toured and talked with staff at P.W. Moore Elementary School, also participated in a Zoom meeting a few weeks ago with folks at P.W. Moore, and want to give him time, and graciously he's accepted the opportunity to speak with you tonight about whole child community schooling. So Dr. Berry, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ingram and Madam Chair and distinguished members of the board. It's great to be back here in North Carolina. Kind of part Gamecock and part Tar Heel, if you believe that, and have my heart in both places. But one thing that Dr. Ingram did not mention about my return home to Columbia is where my first and only grandchild is. He lives just about 0.8 of a mile where my wife and I live. It's the best thing ever. Let me just say in my, to get you to know me a little bit better, been at this for about 40 years. One way or another, area of practice, research, and policy, all to create, hopefully, our country and here in the South, much more equitable system of public education. I've spent a lot of time working to advance teaching, where I've met and worked closely with Governor Hunt many, many decades ago. It's no surprise to any of you here tonight for me to tell you that you are a child in a low-income community. You're a child of color, you're much more likely not to get access to people and programs, resources that it's not that we are not without effort, without program. Look around the state, look around the country, everything that needs to be done to create a system of whole child education is being done somewhere in our communities, in our states. What is missing is a coherent strategy. I have spent a lot of time with educators in North and South Carolina. Virtually every one of those teachers and principals are trying to do their darndest, their best to serve the whole child, his or her academic needs, cognitive needs, social emotional needs, physical needs. But they're doing it in a system that is not designed to do so. This, in essence, is the definition of whole child education. The good news is that we know how to do this. And in fact, if you look around the world, and I've been fortunate enough in my career to spend time in some of the highest performing jurisdictions around the globe, highest performing education jurisdictions. And when you ask them how to do this type of work, they will explain to you how they've begun to do so and have done so. And when you ask them how they learned how to do it, you may not believe this, but they tell us they learned from American educators. We just have not yet built the system that needs to be in place. One more thing about whole child education. It's not about putting a set of services in one corner of the school building to serve the kids' non-academic needs. That's important. We have good models for doing so. And many of our schools have those models in place. It is about rethinking, reimagining the entire system of education and how we can draw upon not just K-12 educators, but other helping professionals in a coordinated and aligned approach. Dr. Ingram asked me tonight to give you basically a basic primer, if you will, on whole child community school. The why of it, the what of it, and a bit of the how, and some opportunities that we have here that I'm proud to say in North Carolina that we can take advantage of, and your community can be a leader for it in our state. Let me first say, and I'm looking at extraordinary educators in the back of the room over there, the last thing community school is, or whole child education is another program. It is not a program, it is a strategy. In fact, in the most successful community schools around the country, and there are about 5,000 of them now, one of the first things they do to start off with is to do away with programs and pieces of mandates that do not work anymore. It's not about a program. It is not about another curriculum. It is definitely not about top-down school reform, which our country has a long legacy of executing. It's about bottom-up. It's about community-driven, educator-driven, faith-based, business-driven. It is about transformation, and it's not about a quick fix. I promise you that. Does not mean you're not going to see some results soon when you move in this direction, but it is not a quick fix. A couple of guiding principles worth noting. One is, and this is where it starts, not with a program, it starts with deeply engaging with your community. Listening. A colleague of mine who taught me a lot, he's actually from Finland, says that his grandmother taught him one of the most powerful principles about school reform or school transformation years ago when he said, Barnett, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. When trying to work with schools, use those proportionally. Start with listening, deep listening. Start with mapping assets. Every school, every community has assets. Start with creating time for educators to think about and working with other helping professionals in social work, public health, and the like. Start with reimagining how you use people and programs in your school buildings. Start with drawing on specially prepared community navigators, individuals who are part educator, part community organizer, and part social worker. Every successful community school in this country has a designated professional who is the connect the dot person. You already have members of your community who are already ready-made for this type of work, but we've got to put them in a position to be successful. Eventually, policies and financing will have to change to encourage our universities, our social service agencies, our health agencies, and our K-12 agencies, and our higher ed agencies to work more closely together. That will come. That will come. We're already seeing some states and some districts beginning to start changing the way they're financing to encourage the kind of cross-sector collaboration that is so essential. I had the good fortune to be with Stephanie Ambrose and folks at PW more today, and even more so in the last couple of weeks over Zoom or Google Meets. And have learned much from these terrific educators who are working as hard as they possibly can. First and foremost, let me tell you, they are deeply interested in this work and are looking for solutions and have many great ideas already. I've also learned that they already have some strong partnerships with the faith community, but insufficient work has been done with the social services and health agency right across the street. We can do better. We also know that students and parents need more positive communications. We talked about how we might even begin to work with parents and children simultaneously. Some very powerful new ways. You know, there's a lot of potential with the good work of the food pantry that's already serving many of the needs of children, but we can do more there. And finally, we learned there's an opening for an assistant principal at the school. Why not this time use it as a way to develop and support that community narrative? Let me quickly jump into the core elements of community schooling, suggest a few opportunities that we have, and then hopefully, Madam Chair, Dr. Ingram will have time for questions, but I'm always available to work with you as you choose to move forward. About 143 studies have been conducted over the last 10 or so years that point to the evidence of how community schooling closes achievement gaps and creates greater life success for many of the children that they're serving and families. 4 major pillars. The first one is integrated student supports. Imagine every child in a building having individual growth plan. And imagine that that plan not only has built upon data around their academic achievement, whether or not they come to school regularly, but also indicators of their social emotional well-being, their physical well-being, and even more, what children care about. Imagine if you had that kind of data and evidence in front of educators who had more time to work with social workers, school nurses, public health and medical health officials, or to bring in more telehealth services that can really address the needs of that child and his or her family. Pillar one, integrated student supports. Pillar two, active family engagement, deeply active family engagement. How communities and schools work together and to figure out how to connect with parents who, by the way, cannot come to school on a regular basis. They may be working 2 or 3 jobs, maybe commuting 40 or 50 miles. How do you begin to use some of the tools that we've developed and utilized during the pandemic to connect to parents in deep and powerful ways? How do we begin to think about educating parents and children simultaneously in our schools and reorganizing schools in our space there for such a purpose? Something that Ms. Ambrose and I talked about mostly. Also, think about this next pillar, which is critically important. Children do not learn only between 7:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Learning is a 24/7 experience. Many of our children are in some after-school programs. Many of them are not. How do we ensure that every child has the supports they need, and what goes on between 7:30 and 3 o'clock, the formal school curriculum, is connected to the after-school curriculum, making sure every kid has access to a coherent approach to serving their academic, their social, their emotional, physical needs. Imagine if we trained our after-school providers in many of the same ways we train our teachers, and created opportunities for those after-school providers and teachers to have the same type of professional development. This is the essence of Pillar 3. Finally, let me turn to Pillar 4, collaborative leadership practices. It is about democratic decision-making. It is about educators having time and space to think more creatively and take an active role in making decisions. But it's also about students, parents, faith and community leaders being part of that conversation, part of the decision making. Creating the space for that to happen is essential to highly effective community schools. Imagine if we've had some terrific conversations of late with Dr. Williams and some of her colleagues. I can ask you, maybe Dr. Williams, to put your university hat back on, how we can create even new space with our universities in order to really accelerate the opportunities for community schools to be sustained. I mentioned 5,000 community schools across the country. 70 of them are connected to universities, where universities and those community schools are putting many of their resources together, not just to prepare teachers and administrators, but also to provide services and supports. And you have a wonderful opportunity with a terrific partner in Elizabeth City State here. Let me say that each of these pillars are critical, but they've got to be put together. Dr. Ingram likes it when I say we got to think big, start small, but learn fast. This is how we have done this across the country in many places. It is time, we believe, for this to come here to Elizabeth City. We sure hope so. Let me close by saying a couple things about some unique opportunities. One is the work of the Leandro Commission, of which I was fortunate to serve as a researcher in support of some of the commission's deliberation. That body looked at a wide array of studies, also reached the conclusion about the need to implement community schools. There should be, if the governor and the legislature can come to an agreement with the judge, considerable resources for North Carolina to begin to execute community schools. Even if they do not, the federal government, which in the past has only invested about $20 million a year for the entire country. Community schools has in the current budget increased to $440 million. They will be looking to local communities to support, particularly those that have a regional or state strategy. The other two opportunities that we believe are powerful and provide some fortuitous chances for us to move forward is the work of the current superintendent, Catherine Truitt, who has just released a strategic plan called Operation Collapse. In that plan specifically calls for whole child education. And we know for a fact that they're looking for more places other than Durham and Asheville to see that this type of work moves forward. And then finally, I'd like to mention My Future NC, which is a nonprofit in North Carolina that has brought together government, business, and education partners to assemble data, comprehensive data. And if you haven't had a chance to look at your county's report card, if you will, you look at all the indicators that put forth from cradle to career, it gives you a chance to see where you might be on a whole child education system. When I asked one of the developers of this data dashboard, where in North Carolina are communities really using this data to drive decisions, they could not really tell me. This is an opportunity for your community, I think, to show the state how good data and evidence can drive very powerful practices to the benefit of children and their families. Let me close by saying that, as I said from the get-go, everything that needs to be done to create a full child system of education is already in place, and many of those pieces, I guarantee you, are in your community right now. It just takes leadership and action, diligence, data, and fortitude, and strong communications, and we can get this done. I sure hope so for my partly home state, North Carolina, and my home state of South Carolina, which shares so much common interest in serving children and their families and a more equitable system of public education. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are questions for Dr. Berry? Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. President, may I step into your committee for a
Go back
moment?
to Amber.
Okay, we want to back up in my haste to get to Mr. Berry's presentation. I failed to finish out my committee's business, which we had a report. It was just for information from Ms. Godfrey on the ECF funding commitment. So she's online.
Just one moment, Ms. Wood.
Okay. She'll be with us in a minute to give that report. I'm trying to move us along, folks.
Here.
Ms. Godfrey?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I apologize.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me, Ms. Warden?
Sure, we can hear you loudly and clearly. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
Well, good evening. Okay. No problem. Thank you so much for letting me pop back in for a minute. I just wanted to give you guys a brief summary on the Emergency Connectivity Fund initiative that we've been able to be a part of. So just a little bit of background about the Emergency Connectivity Fund. It's a $7.1 billion initiative included in the American Rescue Plan that was passed by Congress in March of 2021. And this funding is meant to provide funding for K-12 public and non-public schools and libraries nationwide to purchase devices to assist with access to the internet while we are not on school campuses. So eligible equipment included student devices as well as Wi-Fi hotspots. The application to receive the ECF funds closed on August 13th of 2021. And our application included the purchase of Chromebooks as well as reimbursement for hotspot service that ECPPS paid during remote learning for student and staff mobile Wi-Fi devices. So I'm excited to let you guys know this evening that we received our funding commitment letter last Monday, November 8th, and we have been approved for a total of $1,268,214.05. So I'm currently working with our E-rate consultant, of course, with finance and with our vendors to begin the purchasing process for Chromebooks as well as the reimbursement for US cellular mobile hotspots. Our funding commitment overview includes $1,194,000 for Chromebooks and a total of $72,600 for reimbursement for US cellular that we spent on Wi-Fi hotspot devices. So all funds must be expended and equipment received prior to July 1st of 2022. But like I said, we're working with finance now and our vendors to go ahead and get moving on this exciting news. So I just wanted to take a minute to share.
Well, thank you, Ms. Godfrey. That is very exciting. And I hope that that is going out as a, public record so everyone is aware. That information also shared with our county commissioners. I think that's very important for them to know as well. So thank you very much for your hard work and your staff, because I'm sure you had a wealth of support and help in attaining those funds. So thank you again for that. And again, I apologize for skipping you on the agenda, but we were trying to move on through. So thank you. All right, we'll turn it over.
That's okay. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Pereza.
Okay, now we'll have a graduation update from Dr. Amy Spencer.
Good evening, Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair and Committee Chair Pereza, Interim Superintendent Ingram, board members, colleagues, and guests. Tonight, I would like to share with you the graduation dates and times for the 2021-2022 seniors. Elizabeth City Pasquotank County Early College graduation will be held on Saturday, May 21st at 10 a.m. in the COA auditorium. Pasquotank County High School will hold their graduation ceremony at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, June 1st. And Northeastern High School will hold their graduation ceremony at 7 p.m. on Thursday, June 2nd. Their venues will be secured soon. That concludes the graduation update.
Okay, are there any questions for Dr. Spencer? Okay, this is just for information only, so if there are no questions, we'll move on to the school improvement plans.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spencer.
Before beginning with the school improvement plans, just wanted to remind the board that Cognia will be conducting their district accreditation virtual visits the week of December 5th. Board members will participate in their interview on Monday, December 6th, prior to the organizational meeting at 3 p.m. We have principals from 3 of our schools here to present their school improvement plans. Each school analyzed data and established school goals and action strategies as their focus for this school year based on areas identified as needing improvement. The school improvement plans you have before you outline these goals and strategies. This evening, you will hear presentations that highlight these plans from Principal Sammy Fudge from Central Elementary School, Principal Javonda Crutch from Pasquotank County High School, and finally, Principal Tony Coley from Northside Elementary School. We will begin with Principal Sammy Fudge.
Good evening, Madam Board Chair Warden, Vice Chair President, board members, Dr. Ingram, Ms. Jane Davis, and Dr. Spencer. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to present our school improvement plan for the upcoming school year. Our plan is a continuation of the goals that we started working on last year. Our first goal centered around increasing student achievement in the area of math by 3% by the end of the current school year. Some of the strategies that we're going to use support hands-on manipulatives to teach math, implementing a school-wide remediation block twice weekly. Third goal is making sure we have the data talks with our teachers and analyzing it. Like math, we're shooting to increase our student performance in ELA by 3% by the end of the current school year for North Carolina EOGs. We're focusing on vocabulary building background knowledge with our kids, making sure that we're implementing research-based instructional strategies like similarities and differences, summarizing and note-taking. And with our kindergartens, we're starting the process of integrating writing. And this will be an ongoing 6-year process for our entire school. So we're introducing Readers Writers Workshop. And our fourth strategy is for support, making sure we meet, making sure we do everything with fidelity. Our third goal focused on building teacher capacity. As a staff, we're doing a survey. We identified differentiation as an area of concern, making sure that we're scaffolding instruction to meet all students' needs. We, as a staff, developed a working definition of what differentiation should look like within central elementary. And with that piece, we're making sure that we integrate differentiation scaffolding within our weekly lesson plans. Our fourth goal deals with addressing our social emotional needs of our students. You know, as you guys know, with COVID, that had really impacted our kids, our families. So we're starting ongoing professional development with Joe Hendershot, out of Ohio. He started working with our staff last spring. Our guidance counselor is running small groups based on feedback she's getting from classroom teachers on the social emotional needs of kids and what groups she can configure. And we're providing ongoing monthly professional development on social emotional needs. Our fifth goal is around parental involvement. And this has somewhat been limited due to COVID. But one of the things that we have been able to do thus far is in the month of September, we did a virtual Loving for Mom. We have an event scheduled for our dad starting in December. So hopefully we'll be able to pull that off. And there's some other events we want to do in the spring as far as recognizing our grandparents and some community events that we have scheduled on our current schedule. And our last goal centered around making sure we're implementing our positive behavior intervention system with fidelity. You know, using surveys to get feedback from our teachers, providing our teachers with strategies to implement within the classroom to cut down the number of referrals, classroom disruption. We're also focusing in on making sure that we're rewarding kids for making great choices. And that summarizes our Consolidated School Improvement Plan for the upcoming school year. I'm welcome to take any questions that you might have at this time.
Do you like the idea of your data talks? Can you kind of share what that would look like?
Yes, what we're working toward is we're doing something called Quick Pod. Is starting every 4 weeks, twice every 9 weeks. We're sitting down with teachers to look at student data on one or two standards, see how the students are performing. And then we're creating an assessment of no more than maybe 6 to 7 questions using the descriptors from the state, urging, developing this proficient English learners. And we're all given that same assessment. Then we're going to analyze data to determine what kids are doing well. So we provide those kids with extension. Those kids are proficient, give them extension also. Those kids that might need some additional support, supporting them. So we're just talking about our kids and knowing our kids and their strengths and their weaknesses.
Thank you.
I like that concept as well. And my question is, how are you going to bring the parents into that discussion as well? How are you going to share that information with them?
Great point. Chair Warden, what we're looking at doing as we get some semblance back to normalcy is that we start having conferences, sharing this data with our parents. Though with some of the virtual state now, as far as them coming into the building, we still can share that piece with them. So that's one of our short and immediate goals, is sharing that data with our parents so they know how students are performing. And some of our teachers are doing that now so that they can support that learning at home.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Could you give me a little bit more information? I probably should know, but I don't. About the expertise of Dr. Joe Henderson.
Yes, actually, Dr. Hendershot was recommended through our counseling department last year. So we brought him in and he provided some ongoing professional development, that social emotional strategies. Okay. So our teachers could put toolbox within their toolboxes, make tools within their toolboxes. But also he addressed some of the needs of our teachers too, because teachers had some concerns as far as how they were dealing with a lot of stress. So we're continuing that process with him this current year.
So essentially the only school in the system that's using that.
I think there may be other schools within our system that using Dr. Hendershot.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fudge? Okay, not, thank you, Mr. Fudge.
Thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, now we will have Ms. Javonda Crutch from Pasquotank County High School.
Good evening. Chair Warden, Vice Chair President, board members, Dr. Ingram. My name is Javonda Crutch. I'm the proud principal of Pasquotank County High School. I gave me notes on this big button in the middle. Let me just introduce you to our family. I will say we do refer to ourselves as that Pasquotank family because we really have a general interest in being a well-functioning family, not a dysfunctional family, but a well-functioning family. We care greatly about our staff members and our students. Right now, we have just over 600 students. If you take a look at a couple of years ago, we were designated as 68% economically disadvantaged. We're about an even split doing about 40% white students, 40% Black students, 11% Hispanic, 6% multi-race, and then 1% everybody else. We have a staff of teachers of about 50 to 51. Right now, the experience for our teachers varies. It's about almost a 1/3 split. 16 of the teachers are brand new. 13 have between 4 and 10 years of experience. And then the other 16 have more than 10 years experience. Our teachers are 100% dedicated to the profession and our students. And the demographics for our teachers are about 67% white, 32% Black, 4% Hispanic, and we currently have 3.
Excuse me.
All right, so I don't know if you can see that very clearly. That is a look at our data over the past 5 years. If you look at the color coding as they go across the columns, that kind of represents cohorts, not exactly, because when you get to the high school level, even though you have some students in certain core areas, they can kind of mix up depending on if they took those courses 8th grade or not. As you can see, we have some room to grow as far as proficiency level, but also with just growth in general. But we have a plan to address those, that data. This first goal basically says that we're going to work together to make sure that we collaborate, reflect, incorporate best practices, look at our data, to ensure that we have high levels of learning for all students. And there's 2 important goals that we have in order to achieve that. The first is unpacking standards. And I know that that doesn't sound like the, that's not like the exciting part of school or the fun part of school, but it's very essential. And for high school level, and when you have the standards that change like every 5 years, the most important thing is making sure we understand those standards, and then we break it down and make sure we know how to teach those standards. So that work has been done the past couple of years. And so it was the last summer, and then this summer they spent time refining that, all the departments together. And so that's one of the ways that we're going to get this work done. The other one, which is I think one of the most important, is the PLCs that working together. So currently our departments work together, at least have a PLC at least once per week. We do that during our flex time, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And this is where we get that real work done. At the high school level, it's very difficult to have an entire PLC to be able, an entire department to have one whole bell off, because it will really mess up the schedule for the kids. And when we do our master schedule, that is primarily for the students. And so we've created this time, and we created it during the day so that students can, teachers can actually work together. The PLCs are working, they're building trust. They've been doing that again for the past couple of years. And we're working on that structure to make sure we address all the problems and the issues, and so that we can strengthen what we have. That second goal is to make sure that students are connected and engaged to their school, their peers, and their community. And the way we focus on that is with SEL activities. We have an SEL, social emotional learning standard for the month. So we change it up every single month. And then every week we have a quote that goes along with it and activities. And so our teachers choose at least one SEL activity each week. Of course, many of them do many more than that, but that's how we kind of build that structure together. And so we just focus on one. This month it is self-management. All right, now our goal is we effectively use campus flex time to meet the academic, emotional, and social needs and behavioral needs of our students. And that's what I wanted to spend the majority of my time. And so right now we have flex time period, the first hour of the day. It is in 2 sections, but there are 2 30-minute sections. So we have a wide variety of things that go on during that flex time. Not only do we have the academic or the tutoring remediation time, but we also have enrichment time. A large majority of our clubs meet during that time. We have things like weight training, basket weaving, so many different topics. And these are things that really were high interest to the teachers. And then we wanted to ensure that if the teacher was excited about it, then they could make sure they carry that point across to the students. So just a wide variety of things. The other thing that happens is the PLC. That's how we do that. Also, if you think about it, it's really difficult for high school to have a flexible time, and that's why we call it Panther Flex Time, because we literally can build in things that we need without taking away from the, normal 4 classes. Our departments are working really hard to make sure we meet those needs. I want to bring out two other things that our students have done during this time, just this year, even though we still have challenges this year. So one thing is we had two groups of students come together and plan homecoming activities. And that might not sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal when you think about the students who were able to participate. Because most of the time, students that don't have a ride after school or nobody can come and pick them up, normally those students don't participate and plan homecoming. This year they were able to. And then they even convinced me, they said, well, can we do this during the school day? And I was a little, but it was a great thing to do because they really got into it and we saw improvements kind of beyond. I believe it came just from that one event. I think it boosted school spirit. The other thing that we're working on right now is P-Tank's Got Talent, a talent show for our students. And this idea was by the students. We had auditions last week. So the students are really excited about that. And so again, that's just two opportunities that we have since we built in. And even though that's not talking directly about the academics, I think it plays a big part because it meets those social emotional needs. Kids have to feel connected to school in order to do well in school, whether that's connection comes from FFA or comes from football or wherever it comes from. It's really important that they have that connection. Questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Crutch?
Have you found that those social activities that you're really promoting directly affect the academic progress that students make? I mean, like, for example, have you studied students who perhaps were not doing very well and after having an opportunity to participate in those activities, you've seen their academic progress kind of tick up?
Yes, I don't have any quantitative data, but if you think qualitatively, and that's why I said what I said, when they have a connection, and sometimes even if I can't make that connection with the students, all I have to do is talk to who I know they're connected with. Like, I'm going to use Mr. Roundtree as an example. Mr. Roundtree's enrichment every day. There's only supposed to be 23 kids in there, but there's probably 30. And I don't know what they talk about every day, but it is full. But when I have an issue or when another teacher has an issue with somebody that, they're going to go to Mr. Roundtree for no matter what it is. So he does like the hunting and the different academic clubs like that. Of course, they're not literally hunting during that time. They're talking about it. But he's able to talk to them and say, hey, I need you to work in this area. And that's what kids want. Like, they don't want to be invisible. They want somebody who knows about them, who cares about them. And that's what we're trying to do at high school. And that's difficult, especially with sometimes the core teachers, because a lot of times they specialize in, English 1 or English 4, and they don't see those kids again. So we're trying to build connections all the way throughout, little pockets, even when you didn't think that they would be there. And I believe it is working. But I can definitely get data and share that at the update.
Okay. I'd appreciate that.
Who decides on the topics for your professional learning?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Who decides what you'll study during your PL?
The teachers decide what they study during the PLC. And I believe again that it's about that teacher efficacy because they are the experts. They already know what areas they need. Now they'll get support and we'll lead them, or guide them in the right direction, but they determine what they want to work on and how they're going to get.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Crutch.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Mr. Tony Coley from Northside Elementary.
I'd like to say good evening to our board. Good evening to Chair Ward, Vice Chair Perez, Superintendent Ingram, and everyone who's assembled here this evening. Thank you all. So we're going to begin our Consolidated School Improvement Plan for Northside Elementary School. As you can see, it's indicated by a couple of pictures up here. As indicated by our colleagues, we are a school family. And we are proud representative of those bears of Northside Elementary School. Okay, so you see some of the school composition on the board here and in front of you all. Currently, we're serving 416 students at Northside Elementary School, kindergarten through 5th grade. You can see our staff breakdown. And most of our staff are veteran teachers. You can see those that we have who are National Board Certified and those pursuing. And approximately 58% of our students prior to the COVID pandemic were free and reduced lunch for our cafeteria staff. Before you and on the slide, you can see our demographics and the breakdown of the students we serve at Northside Elementary School. Those proud bears. We have some data points that are here before you. Of the information that you see, I'd like to tell the story holistically, because at the end of the 2021 school year, with our end of grade data, only 54% of our students took the end of grade test. Of the 3-year trends you see before that, 2 out of those 3 years, the school met growth. And our teachers are hard on the battlefield ensuring that we do that for this school year. You can see the picture here. These are pictures from our fall Title I night. We had that ending the month of October. And it was a great way for our students and staff and parents to come together to see the great things that we're already doing. As we reeled them in early, we had some sweet treats as well, courtesy of our neighborhood ice cream truck. So goal 1. As we came together as a school improvement team, we decided on these goals for our schools and our students at Northside Elementary School. Our goal is to reach 67% efficiency, school community in the areas of reading, math, and writing. We're using one of these strategies by using our ABBIT strategies, incorporating writing and organization as we prep to get towards that goal. Also, we're progress monitoring using benchmark assessments and universal screenings. Additionally, we do daily small group instruction and number talks with data dives. We're doing that by the areas of our students having their own data binder by January 2022. Also in the classrooms, our teachers having their own data wall to compile individual student data at Northside Elementary School. As you can see, another picture, we have 3rd grade team hard at work there, even though they dressed up in our character book night for Title I event. Goal 2, promote a caring, safe learning environment. And here are the strategies that we're doing in order to incorporate that. Every morning, our students have a morning meeting where they have time to decompress, talk, debrief, and do openings with our staff. We also have our counselor who is available and does small group sessions as well as individual sessions for our students of Northside Elementary. We also have encouraged good behavior incentives. And beginning of the year, our whole 5th grade team, all 5th grade students, got a treat from the cafeteria courtesy of us. Ice cream. No 5th grader could go wrong with ice cream. Also, by January 2022, all of our students on campus will have a student faculty mentor. So the Bears of Northside Elementary School, each person by January 2022, our goal is to make sure that they have an advocate, a staff member on hand, on campus, that they can go to outside of their academic curriculum. And we will reinforce these strategies and behaviors through our health and our PE means, as well as our other connected reach classes. On this slide, it mentions that go-to and that goal-to extension for that mentoring group. Also, we have incorporated a club on a prowl, where we have Cubs, young men who are going to be in our Cubs on the Prowl program at Northside Elementary School. Strongly encouraged by those who represent and embody our standards of Northside Elementary School. Also, we will have a young lady mentoring group on campus as well, entitled Navy and Orange Pearls, for our school's colors, Navy and Orange. Goal 3, how are we going to support our staff? So with staff professional development, in addition with highlighting key areas, key facts, and key things that we have in order to keep our school routine and expectations going, we will also turn these into mini professional development sessions. This will be at our faculty meetings and shared in our school improvement team meeting. Additionally, we have reinstated this school year our hospitality committee, who is in charge of making sure that we do holiday and birthday breakfasts. In addition to initiatives that we have on Northside Elementary School's campus in order to decompress and have that social opportunity to engage with colleagues that you don't normally also do during the school day on your grade level. If anyone ventures off for professional development, they are encouraged, and it's an expectation in Northside Elementary School that they bring that information back and they share it with our colleagues. Because it is important that those ideas and strategies get back to our students in the classroom. As you can see, as indicated by our Northside Elementary School budget, the majority of what we have already allocated for spending, we're trying to reinforce and put it back in our personnel. That's in the form of remediation teachers and in the form of tutoring. Here you see some of our lovely staff members who were pictured, because we have some great things to celebrate in Northside Elementary. Prior to coming here, we had a school improvement team meeting, and we have some grounds on the works for some things that we're doing for a winter Title I night as well, a virtual cocoa social. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them at this time.
When is your tutoring opportunities offered? Are they offered during the day, or are they offered after school or before school?
Our proposal is to use our Title I budget and to start them up at the beginning of the third 9 weeks after school.
After school.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Coley? Okay, not, thank you, Mr. Coley.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
That concludes the presentations for this evening. I am asking that the school improvement plans that were shared this evening be placed on the consent agenda for next Monday's Board of Education.
Are there any questions for Dr. Spencer about any of the plans? Okay, if not, Chair Warden, I make a motion to place PE 03 for Central Elementary Schools Plan, PE 04 for Pasquotank County High Schools Plan, PE 05 for Northside Elementary School Plan on the consent agenda for Monday, November 22nd's agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll have a roll call vote.
Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
and Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer. And now I'm going to turn it over to, that's it for you, Ms. President, correct?
Yes.
I don't want to move too quickly. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you, Ms. Houston, Policy Committee.
And I see that Ms. Sawyer is already at the podium, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Perezza, Committee Chair Houston, Interim Superintendent Ingram, board members, and community. I come before you this evening to share policy updates and information. First, as required by Session Law 2021-130, Section 10, as you are aware, boards are now required to revisit this policy on a monthly basis. This is the face covering policy. At this time, we have no recommended changes to the face covering policy. But I would like to share that staff started meeting this morning to discuss the policy and any recommended revisions. And at this time, based on Pasco-Tank County still being in a red zone and the recommendations under strong schools, we have no recommended changes. Then I shared policy updates with you in October as first reads. This evening, I would like to highlight specific revisions or information on select policies as follows. PC 07, Policy 2110, Board Member Elections. This policy does not require revision as our Board of Education elections continue to take place in November. No additional approval is needed for this policy. PC 12, 3228, and 7323, use of personal school business. This policy is still under review by administration and will be brought back before you in December. PC 15, 4334/5035/7345, use of unmanned aircraft. This policy is still under review by administration and will be brought back before you in December. PC 21, 7300, staff responsibilities. The only revisions to this policy include changing Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources to Chief Human Resources Officer. That is the only change to that policy. All policy updates are as recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association with edits as needed by our administrative team. I have one last policy revision to share with you this evening, and this was not previously shared. PC 32, Policy 5020, visitors to the school. This policy has been revised to remove the temporary restriction for allowing visitors inside our school facilities unless deemed essential. By revising this policy, schools will have the ability to have more parental and community involvement within the school setting. We will continue to follow COVID safety protocols with our visitors. Principals will be able to determine how events and activities take place and will continue to submit safety plans as they do now. We did poll the principals regarding this revision, and it was unanimously agreed to revisit the policy and to do this revision at this time. We did add the temporary restriction from the community use of facilities policy that only allows community use of outdoor facilities. Indoor use of facilities by the community would continue to be restricted at this time. We also referenced the face covering policy, so that would need to be followed in whatever stage we are in with that policy at that time. Question? So with no questions, Committee Chair Houston, I would like to request temporary approval of PC 32 with revisions as presented until official board approval takes place in accordance with policy 2420. This is the only action requested this evening. PC 01 through PC 11, PC 13 and 14, and PC 16 through PC 32 will be placed on the agenda for November 22nd for consideration of approval. I am not requesting they be placed on the consent agenda. Should there be questions between this meeting and our subsequent meeting? This concludes my presentation.
And so, I'd like to move to grant temporary approval of PC 33 with revision as presented until official board approval takes place in accordance with policy 2420.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. A roll call vote. Pam Perezza.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
George Archuleta.
Yes.
And Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Is there anything else that needs to come up for the policy? That concludes my report, Madam.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Thank you, Ms. Sawyer. Now we're going to move on, and I'm going to ask Dr. Williams to take us into closed session. And we'll take a brief break while everyone is clearing out.
A motion for the board to go into closed session as allowed by NC Statute 143 through 118, 11A6 for the purpose of considering one or more personnel matters that are confidential under NC Statute, General Statute 115C through 320, and as allowed by NC Statute 143 318, 11A3 to consult with the board attorney regarding matters protected by the attorney-client privilege and to preserve that privilege.
Been moved and seconded that we go into closed session at this time. We'll take a roll call vote.
Pam Perezza.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
George Archuleta.
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
And as I said, we'll take a brief break while everyone is clearing out and we're getting the microphones situated. Thank you.